Welcome, beautiful people, to Petrify the Patriarchy. I'm your guide, Jo B. If you're ready to unearth the subtle ways patriarchal culture has shaped your world and uncover the hidden power within your own shadow, you're in the right place. Here we don't just speak truth to power, we wield it, turning stagnant energies to stone so that your authentic, liberated self can truly flourish. Let the unlearning begin. Welcome, visionary, to Petrify the Patriarchy. I'm Jo B, your host and unlearning coach, consultant, myriad other aspects to me. I've been struggling between feeling well and keeping a reasonable schedule. So I'm here. I'm taking a break from the typical educator version of me, sharing information and research and the threads that I have drawn through aspects of patriarchal culture with a little bit of witchy and a little bit of mythology kind of mixed into it. And today I'm going to be diving into what that imbalance of the over imbalance of patriarchal culture and how that plays out in real life. And I'm about to get personal. I'm going to be super vulnerable. I'm sharing a story very publicly that only really a handful of people know the in-depth version of. So grab your drink of choice, settle in, and we're going to get started here. So I'm inviting you into my own story, my own journey, absolute crushing identity crisis because of a series of events that happened over a couple, 2-3 years of my life. And I struggled with suicidal thoughts. I struggled with, what's the point? What's the point of all this? Why did I fight so hard to become an educator and, work my ass off every single day to do the absolute best I could, only for this to be the outcome? And the outcome is that I ended up walking away. And I had to make that choice for my survival. And I mean that, my survival. And so I'm here now, out in the world, creating my own entrepreneurship and podcasting. I'm writing books. I'm coaching, I'm consulting, doing all the unlearning around this particular aspect of life. And this is why I ended up here. And so I'm going to tell part of a story because it's a long story. I'm going to tell part of it today. And we'll get into other bits and pieces as time goes on as well. So we're going to unlearn together through my series of unfortunate events, the universe punching me in the face. And I want to kind of reiterate that, in telling this story, it's not for me to sit and continue to dwell in trauma. I don't want to trauma dump. I don't want to, I don't want to do anything harmful. I'm here to tell a story and simply to add that illumination that, to patriarchal structures that cause the harm that they cause. I'm at the end of that harm. And my story, I don't think, is any different than many other women out there. And hopefully it resonates with some of you, and those of you who are listening, maybe it'll change some of your ways. Maybe it'll change your perspectives. My hope is yes, because if somebody who works in a woman-dominated field can be treated the way that I was treated, God only knows what's happening out there in places that is male-dominated, and this is why I don't work there. So, the very first part of the story takes place in public education. I was a teacher. We'll say educator for about 20 years. I started as a paraeducator, that's like a teacher assistant. I got my teaching credentials, and then I was a guest teacher, a substitute for a number of years before I became a classroom teacher. And I spent most of my time in second grade. Loved it, absolutely loved my time in second grade. But I had an opportunity to become a teacher coach, and I needed to do something a little different. I was feeling the drive to try something new and expand my skill set outside of the classroom. And I, because of my side gig, which has been facilitation and curriculum design and professional development, it made total sense for me to take on a teacher coaching role. And I was so excited. I'm like, yep, this is the next step. This is exactly where I need to be. Little did I know what I was in for, because I encountered that stark contrast of where I felt like I needed to be, and then exactly what happened through that patriarchal power play, two very different dichotomies for me. And I found that my soul's alignment suddenly struggled to remain balanced. So, I'm also going to stop here for just a second and say, I kind of did a prologue a couple of episodes back that really dove into my belief systems and that alignment piece. And I'm hoping that, I don't double up too much while I'm kind of rambling here a little bit. I've got my notes, but, notes only go so far when you get on a tangent. So, I kind of dove into the hows and the whys that I ended up where I ended up, and, what no means to me, what, the dominant culture of education is women don't harass women as a general rule, outdated practice and policy. I kind of went into, kind of some basic constructs. So I'm going to try to avoid speaking to that as I continue on my journey with you. But I became a teacher coach, and the very first day of our in-service, so when you're a teacher, you usually have days you have to be at school, prepping for the year, learning new policies, new curriculum, whatever it might be. But teachers usually go to school before the kids come. And I was in charge of delivering most of the professional development for those two. We had 2 days in our district. And the very first break that we had, the very first moment we could kind of get up and, breathe a little bit, this guy made a beeline for me. And I think I shared in my last podcast around this, that the energetic component of this individual hit me before he did. And because of my history with sexual assault and domestic violence, I can sniff it out. I can feel it before it even comes in the room, right? And this is a thing that many women have, because when we've been treated poorly, it's an energetic component that you just can't put your finger on. And I'd like to say that there's scientific data out there to prove that this is a thing. I don't know if there is. I can definitely look into that. But women have this sixth sense, this intuition around people who are, we'll just say creepy. And this person, from that moment, in front of a whole room full of people, in front of my supervisor, who even said to me, "He's hitting on you." And I'm like, I know what that is. I know how to be professional. I can be friendly. I can be civil. Definitely not going there, right? Number one, was not remotely attracted to this individual. Number two, I don't shit where I eat. These are things I think I said in my previous podcast. So, it started day one, and his consistent, regular attempt to gain my favor in some capacity did not ever really let up. And there were always moments where he was too forward, he was too much in my space, he was too eager to hand me his card and say, let's go out for coffee, call me, text me, whatever. And I never, ever, ever reciprocated in any capacity other than being friendly and professional while we were in a work setting. And we were never outside of a work setting. So I know how to be friendly and professional. Again, that's a thing that I kind of dove into in the previous podcast, was that, there is a discrepancy between men and women. Women can be friendly. We can be professional. Our lives depend on whether or not we smile sometimes, right? And men don't seem to discern that difference, and they take any kind of friendly, professional, civil, kind of attitudes as, interest, right? And so I think he mistook my professionalism for interest, and it just kind of kept going from there. He always was asking me to Google him. He was always telling me about his music career. He was always telling me he always had stories to tell me to, I think, in some way make me kind of, go Google Gaga over him. And I wasn't buying it. There just was no interest on my end. And it was, again, it was regular, it was consistent, it was every time we were in the same space. Because I was a coach, I was constantly in and out of classrooms while people were teaching. He would stop teaching to entertain me or to converse with me rather than focusing on the students in his space. I was tasked with coaching him for a while, and because he would stop teaching when I was there, I had very little information to go on, and I eventually said something to my supervisor like, I'm done. Like, he's not interested in me being in his space. I'm not going out there. I'm not doing it. And so I stopped, trying to support him. And he had already kind of been flagged as somebody who needed supports because many other teachers before me had complained about, the fact that the stuff that he was working on with kids was developmentally inappropriate and blah, blah, blah. So, there were already issues before I got there. And then I start to hear some of the stories about how during COVID, he would have conversations with the teachers versus work with the students on the screen, about how, he was always asking people to Google him. Like, again, he really wanted to put out this persona that he was something bigger than I think he actually was. And I'm going to reiterate, I never followed through with anything. I just kept a professional, friendly, civil stance with him. And I'm also going to state that there was nothing ever egregious that happened with him, right? It's not like he ever physically put his hands on me, and there's more to that story in a little bit. He never physically put his hands on me, and he never, it's not like he ever flashed himself at me, but his mannerisms were always uncomfortable. And let me just dive into that a little bit deeper. The times that I spent in his spaces, there were a handful of times where he would position himself between the doorway and me, so that exiting when I needed to exit wasn't a thing that I could do easily. And so I don't know how many times this happened, but I remember the last time specifically where I'm like, I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not coming into his spaces. He was standing at the back of his classroom, and I had transitioned a classroom full of students, and, I have a schedule that I need to keep. And so I'm trying to rush out and get to where I need to get to. And he's standing, in my way. And so I recognized that it was going to be a struggle to get past him, to get out of his room. So I kind of danced around kids, checking in. Hey, how's it going? Are you sitting in the right chair? Are you ready to do the right thing? Are you, make sure you got your best, learning attitude on, kind of coaching the kiddos. And I remember circling and circling and circling, and then he would follow me, and then at some point he had left enough space that I could kind of back out and leave the space. And I remember this kind of moment of panic, like, I'm leaving a classroom of students here with him, and if this is how I feel as an adult, oh my, like, I didn't really know what to do with that at that point. But like most women, I just kind of swallowed it and dealt with it silently. I you know, I don't rock the boat. Again, nothing egregious happened, and I had to put this, you know, this energy out there that, you know, I'm constantly on the lookout to make sure I don't have to interact with him more than is absolutely necessary. And my head is on a swivel. I'm looking down the hallway. I'm diving into classrooms. I'm you know, walking into a bathroom and waiting for him to pass. There was one time I knew he spotted me, and I remember pretending to look like I forgot something, and I turned around and walked out a door. It's the middle of winter, by the way, and I walked all the way around the building outside and entered a different entrance to avoid interacting with him. And I mean, these are just examples of how much energy I was spending avoiding somebody who really gave off vibes that were not healthy to me. But what do you do with that, right? Like, I know that in and of itself isn't necessarily enough for people to go say anything more than he's just, you know, creepy or weird or whatever. But this happened almost on the daily, and it was uncomfortable for over a year and some months. One of the other this is kind of a pivotal part to the story too. That first year, I was out supervising students at recess, and he spotted me, came right up to me and said, "I've been meaning to ask you a question." And I'm like, "Okay." And he said, "Will you be my Valentine?" And I remember holding my hand up, and at this point I'm wearing fake engagement rings, right? Like, I'm so putting myself out there that I'm not into this. I'm not going to participate. And I remember holding my hand up and saying, "Hold up, like, let's have a conversation, because, okay, Valentine is, you know, romantic, and this is a professional friendly thing, and I'm okay with professional and friendly. I'm not okay with hearts and romance," right? So we had a little conversation about what that could look like, and agreed to, you know, a little exchange. Now, let me just say, I also didn't want to agree to any exchange, and maybe there was some other way out of it, but I felt fully trapped in that moment, and so I just kind of went with it. And I did go to my administrator and explain, you know, the situation, and she said, "Do you want to file a grievance?" And I said, "No, I handled it, because how else?" I mean, I've been saying no by being unavailable and not reciprocating anything and not calling him and not, you know, "Hey, when are we going to go get coffee?" Like we talked about, like, none of that ever happened. So I'm like, okay, I finally said no. Like, I'm fine with professional and friendly. And I figured he would have been smart enough to get that. But again, situations kept coming up and coming up and coming up. And it was a lot of energy. We did do an exchange, and I bought him a blank journal and a very non-romantic blank card, and put it in his mailbox. And then I got a card back with a box of, you know, like a mini box of chocolates. Okay, that was weird enough in and of itself. So I'm glad that was in my mailbox, and that, you know, that was the extent of the exchange. But this, you know, we're talking about a year and a half now of, like, every day there's this kind of constant you know, I'm looking over my shoulder, or, you know, I'm expecting, you know, some discomfort around this individual. And again, it's not like I'm dealing with it silently. Like, I'm not complaining to anybody about anything other than, you know, hey, this, you know, Valentine situation came up. But everybody knew because he made a lot of other people uncomfortable as well. And I worked in a room with other adults. And so when I would say, hey, he's looking for me, tell him I'm not here, they knew what that meant because they saw it too. And it became a little bit of a joke in some ways because, you know, it was constant and they knew it. And luckily my desk was way back in the corner, hidden behind tall bookshelves, so you couldn't see me when you peeked your head in the room. So, you know, it became kind of a nice little hideout. And, you know, again, constant energy being expelled around this. And it was highly problematic. And I really began to hate my job. And this wasn't the only reason I began to hate my job, but it was a big component to it, because how are you supposed to enjoy work when you're constantly looking over your shoulder? And that energy just, it drained me, and I would get home and just crash. I couldn't do anything once I got home because so much energy had been expelled to avoid any situation with this person. So fast forward to about a year and a half of being in the same building with this person, and I was called into a classroom at the end of the day for brand new teacher, fresh out of teaching college. And she said, I'm really uncomfortable and I don't know who to talk to. And I'm like, oh, okay. So tell me what's going on. I'll see if I can support you. You know, as a coach, I was kind of considered pseudo admin, but obviously didn't get paid that way. And then also my hands are kind of tied in procedure and whatnot. But, you know, let me support you for sure. Like, I don't want to leave you hanging in any capacity. And she told me almost the exact same situation I'd been dealing with for a year and a half. It was almost exactly my story, word for word. The way that he blocked the entrance, the way that he asked her to Google him, handing her his card and saying, call me, let's go get coffee. Like, it was the same exact shit. And this is where I turn into Medusa. I get so fucking pissed. I lost my shit. Like, I'm so angry because, you know, about 6 months earlier, I'd had an opportunity to file some paperwork around what I was experiencing, and I didn't do it. And now another teacher is dealing with this, and I'm irate, right? Like, I'm ready to run out there and turn people to stone. I'm so mad. And because I thought I was just kind of silently dealing with this and just doing the best of my ability, that moment turned me into someone new. And I wrestled with, what am I going to do about this for a minute? And ultimately, you know, she made the choice that she needed to make, which was to not file any formal complaint. And I said, okay, I'm going to go ahead and do this. I should have done it, you know, roughly 6 months ago. I'm going to do this now. And so I filed a formal complaint, and, you know, we're talking December. So I filed the complaint. We had, I don't know, a couple, 2-3 days left of school. And then my whole break was, now all the anxiety. I couldn't do anything. I was just completely wrecked. My dog is snorting. I'm sure you can hear it. But I formally complained to the district, and I had to go through an investigation, and my principal called me into his office and asked me a bunch of questions. One of them really stuck with me. Why now? Why are you complaining about this now? And I said, because I've been dealing with this for a year and a half, and I've been doing it silently, and now I've got a brand new teacher who is dealing with the same shit that I've been dealing with for a year and a half. I'm sorry. Like, had it been just me, it had probably just been silent about it. Like, but now it involves somebody else, and I'm mad, and something needs to be done. So, I, I filed the complaint. I go through my the whole process, which in and of itself is not a great process to have to go through. But I followed the protocol, right? We always have this protocol. And now I've got like a day or two of school left, and the anxiety is so heavy, I'm sick to my stomach. So I end up taking sick leave that last day of school before break because I'm on the verge of throwing up every single minute because we're in the same building. He knows I've complained about him. He knows paperwork has been filed. And I don't want to see him because it's been a year and a half of absolute, just bullshit around that, again, that energetic component of having my head on a swivel. And I was worried about confrontation, and I didn't know what that would look like. I didn't want to find out. So I ended up taking sick leave that last day of school, and I went home. And then my whole 2 weeks of winter break was me completely immobilized by fear. I couldn't move. I couldn't do anything. I couldn't sleep. Eating was hard. Like, it was, all of it was just bad. And we went back to school, and I'm a big ball of anxiety because I don't really know what to expect. But hear through the grapevine that he had been put on paid leave, and that I wasn't going to have to run into him, which offered some relief. But at the same time, like, I'm not, as the victim, the person who filed the paperwork, I'm not the one hearing this information. It's coming from other sources. Admin was told not to talk about it. And I was, when I filed, I got legal jargon sent to me. We got your request. Here's all the legal stuff around it. And that was the end of it. I didn't hear anything more. I had to call HR and ask what was going on 2 weeks later. And they scrambled to get their stuff together so that they could interview me. And the one question I remember when HR interviewed me was, did you ever tell him no? And I got really mad when they asked me that question. And I'm like, why do I have to say no? How come never following through? How come absolutely never acting on anything? How come avoiding? How come, me, and this is all things that I had detailed in my report, right? How come me telling other adults that I work with, if he comes looking for me, I'm not here? How come that isn't no, right? Like, why do I have to verbalize no? Why is this such a big thing? And thought for sure, once the interview ended, that I'd be hearing something positive in my mind. I'd be hearing something positive. And then I got the call. We want a meeting with you. And the call was from the HR person, and they called it unfounded. And I asked, first of all, I was blown away. I was absolutely shocked that this, me being the quality educator that I am, and having given almost 20 years of my life to this district, and because of my background in equity work and all the professional development work that I do, and affinity groups, and all of these things that I have had helped create and found within this district, I'm looked at like I'm lying about this. And I'm not gonna lie. I had a moment. I freaked out. I got really, really mad that that what I was being told was my story was bullshit. I asked them what their metric was for determining when something was founded or unfounded, and they didn't have one. And I'm like, so this is subjective then. You're just taking his word versus mine. Which also, here's an important piece of information. I had found out right as I was filing my grievance, right before we went on break, I found out through others who decided to do some research on him. He lost his teaching license in another state for sexually harassing a woman in his building. So now, I've got another teacher coming to me and telling me a story. She chose not to file a grievance. I mentioned that another teacher came to me in my formal grievance. They have proof that he lost his license in another state. And there's a pattern, right? There's a pattern, but they're going to say that my claim is unfounded. And this is where things start to take a turn. Unfounded. My experience to this district that I have given so much of my time and energy and youth and vitality on is telling me that my experience, my truth, and my reputation is on the line. But none of that had any basis. There's no foundation, no ground to stand on when it comes to me having formalized a complaint like that. I know what I lived through, and I know what I experienced with this individual, and to say that it was unfounded was the biggest knife in the back I think I've probably ever experienced. And I've experienced a lot. As a grown human being, I've experienced a lot. Okay, I'm gonna stop here for now. We're gonna stop on the unfounded by HR, and I will continue this story a little later. There's a whole lot more to it, and again, I'm hopeful that others listening to this story something will resonate with you. It will maybe help change perspectives, practice, and policy, and also give people, women specifically who are dealing with this stuff, maybe it gives you a sense of relief that someone else has gone through this as well, and that you're not alone in this idea that you're not believed or unfounded complaints. Yeah. Okay. Joby signing off for now. Please subscribe so you don't miss an episode of Petrify the Patriarchy. If you are looking for coaching or consulting for your organization or on anything patriarchal, go to my website and grab my frameworks that I've spent a lot of time researching. Go to my website, grab my frameworks, and yeah, until next time, Joby signing off.